The massive hangar bay of the United Earth Space Command stood silent as Captain James Walker stared at what the aliens called a gift. Next to him, his chief engineer Mike Torres scratched his gray-streaked beard, both men trying to hide their disappointment. The ship before them looked like it had been through a war and lost badly. "They can't be serious," Torres muttered, walking around a particularly large dent in the hull. "This thing looks ready for the scrapyard." Walker kept his face neutral, aware of the alien diplomats watching from the observation deck above. The ship was huge, nearly 300 meters long, its hull a patchwork of different metal plates. Paint peeled off in long strips, revealing the dull metal underneath. Several cargo doors hung at odd angles, and at least 2 of the 6 engine pods looked completely dead. Ambassador Reed, the alien representative, floated down to their level using his gravity belt. His long blue robes swished as he landed, and his face held what humans had learned to recognize as a smirk. "Is the gift not satisfactory, Captain Walker? This is, after all, a generous offering from the Galactic Council to help Earth join the spacefaring community." Walker fought to keep his voice steady. "We are grateful for the Council's generosity." He'd been warned about this. Earth was the new kid on the block, and some races didn't like how quickly humans had developed their own space technology. This gift was meant to put them in their place. Torres had already pulled out his tablet and was scanning the ship's systems. His eyes widened. "Captain, you need to see this." He handed over the device, and Walker's heart sank further. The power core was running at 12% capacity. The life support systems were barely functioning. The navigation computer looked like it had been purposely stripped of key components. "The vessel was recently decommissioned from our cargo fleet," Ambassador Reed explained, his translator making his voice sound artificially smooth. "We thought it would be appropriate for your level of technological development." Walker caught the insult, but let it slide. He'd been a captain long enough to know when someone was trying to get under his skin. Instead, he turned to Torres and nodded. "Let's get a full team in here. I want every inch of this ship examined before we make any decisions." The next 12 hours were a flurry of activity. Engineering teams swarmed over the vessel like ants, scanning, probing, and documenting everything. Walker stood in what would be the bridge, looking at the empty spaces where key equipment should be. The aliens hadn't even left them proper control interfaces. "Captain," Torres's voice crackled over the comm, "you need to come to the engine room. Now." Walker found his chief engineer standing in front of the massive power core, practically bouncing with excitement. Gone was the disappointment from earlier, replaced by a gleam in his eyes that Walker had learned to both respect and fear. "Look at this." Torres pointed to the core. "They think they stripped it down, made it useless. But they don't understand how these systems work like we do. This isn't just a power core, it's a matter-antimatter reactor. They're using maybe 2% of its potential because their systems are too specialized, too dependent on fancy controllers and interfaces." Walker raised an eyebrow. "And we can do better." Torres grinned. "Remember that fusion containment system we developed for the Mars colonies? The one everyone said was too crude, too simple? It'll work perfectly here. We can bypass their control systems entirely, run it our way. This thing could produce 5 times the power they got out of it, maybe more." More engineers joined them, each bringing similar reports. The cargo bay doors they thought were broken. The hydraulics were fine. The aliens just relied too heavily on their automated systems. The dead engine pods, only dead because someone removed the control computers. The basic thrust chambers were intact. "They gave us exactly what we needed," Torres said, his hands moving quickly over his tablet. "They're so used to their high-tech solutions that they forgot about the basics. We can replace their control systems with our own. Simpler, more reliable, and a hell of a lot easier to fix when something goes wrong." Walker watched as his team worked, their excitement growing with each discovery. The aliens had given them what they thought was garbage. but they'd actually given humanity exactly what it needed: a chance to prove itself. By the end of the first day, Walker had called a meeting with his senior staff. The holographic projector they'd brought in displayed a complete scan of the ship, areas highlighted in different colors showing work priorities. "The hull is actually in better shape than it looks," Lieutenant Adams, the structural engineer, reported. "Those dents, they're cosmetic. The actual structure is a titanium-based alloy we've never seen before. It's incredibly strong. Life support can be fixed," another engineer added. "We'll have to rebuild the control systems from scratch, but the core components are solid. Give us 2 weeks, we'll have it better than new." "The cargo bays are massive," Torres said, highlighting several sections. "With a few modifications, we could make them modular, reconfigure them for different missions in hours instead of weeks. And those mining laser arrays they left in Bay 3. With some tweaking, they'd make one hell of a point defense system." Walker looked around the room, seeing the same expression on every face. The aliens had tried to humiliate them, but they'd failed to understand something fundamental about human nature. Give humans a challenge. Tell them they can't do something, and they'll move heaven and earth to prove you wrong. "I want repair schedules and resource requirements on my desk by tomorrow morning," Walker ordered. "And keep everything quiet. I don't want our friends upstairs knowing what we're really doing with their gift." As the meeting broke up, Walker walked to the observation window, looking at the ship that would become his command. Behind him, he heard Torres already arguing with Adams about power distribution systems and reactor containment protocols. Ambassador Reed's voice made him turn. The alien diplomat stood in the doorway, that same smug look on his face. "Have you fully assessed your gift, Captain? I trust you understand now the challenge ahead of you." Walker smiled, and for the first time that day, it was genuine. "Oh yes, Ambassador, we understand perfectly. And we're very grateful for such a thoughtful gift. I think it's exactly what we needed." The ambassador's expression flickered, just for a moment, showing uncertainty. Walker turned back to the window, hiding his satisfaction. Let them think they'd put humanity in its place. Let them think they'd handed Earth a piece of junk that would take years to make spaceworthy. They'd learn soon enough what humans could do with a little inspiration and a lot of determination. This ship wouldn't just fly again. It would become something the galaxy had never seen before. Walker already had a name picked out for it, one that seemed more appropriate with each passing hour. They would call it Phoenix, and like its namesake, it would rise from its ashes to become something magnificent, something dangerous, something that would make the galaxy realize that humanity wasn't just another minor race to be pushed around. The real work was about to begin. 3 weeks into the Phoenix project, Mike Torres stood in the engine room, watching as his team installed the new fusion control system. Sparks flew from welding torches as they connected the human-made controllers to the alien power core. The room hummed with energy and purpose, just like every other part of the ship. "How's it looking?" Captain Walker asked, ducking under a bundle of cables as he entered the engine room. Dark circles under his eyes showed he'd been sleeping as little as the rest of them. Torres grinned and pointed to the power readings on his tablet. "Remember when the aliens said this core could only run at 12%? Watch this." He nodded to his team. "Fire it up." The core's light changed from a dull red to bright blue. The hum grew louder, and the deck plates vibrated slightly under their feet. Torres watched the power readings climb. 20%, 40%, 60%. "Hold it at 70, Torres ordered. "We don't want to push it too far on the first test." He turned to Walker. "That's nearly 6 times what they got out of it, and we're not even at full power yet." Walker studied the readings. "How did you manage this?" "Simple, really. The aliens overcomplicated everything. They had 7 different computer systems just to manage power flow. We replaced it all with one robust control system based on our fusion plant designs. Less to go wrong, easier to fix if it does." They walked through the ship, checking on other modifications. The cargo bays had been transformed. What were once simple storage spaces now had reinforced walls and quick-release clamps. Entire sections could be swapped out in hours. "Watch this," Torres said, pressing a button. With a hiss of hydraulics, panels in the cargo bay walls slid aside, revealing rows of equipment. Hidden storage. We can switch from cargo hauling to other configurations without anyone outside knowing what we're carrying. Walker nodded approvingly. And the defensive systems. Torres led him to what used to be a mining storage area. The space was now filled with modified mining lasers, arranged in a circular pattern. Those lasers they left behind. Turns out the cutting beams are perfect for point defense. We've linked them to a targeting system based on our anti-missile technology. Anything small enough to get past the main shields won't last long. And our little surprise in Cargo Bay 3. Torres's grin widened. He pulled up a new diagram on his tablet. "That's the best part. Remember those old electromagnetic railgun designs Earth was working on before we joined the Galactic Council? We've built 6 of them into the hull. They look like standard cargo loading equipment from the outside, but..." He trailed off meaningfully. "How powerful are they?" "Based on our calculations, they'll punch through standard shields like they're not even there. No one uses kinetic weapons in space anymore. They're all focused on energy shields. They won't expect plain old metal moving at relativistic speeds." They reached the bridge, which had changed dramatically. Gone were the empty spaces where alien technology should have been. Instead, human-made control stations filled the room. Screens showed ship status, power levels, and sensor readings. Everything was practical, functional, and most importantly, reliable. "We've installed backup systems for everything," Torres explained. "Manual overrides, mechanical controls. If the computers fail, we can run this ship with hand cranks and eyeballs if we have to. Try finding that on a modern alien vessel." Walker sat in the captain's chair, running his hands over the familiar controls. "How long until we're ready for a real test?" 2 more days to finish the power core installation. Then maybe a week of systems testing. The aliens are still watching us, but they've gotten bored. They think we're just struggling to make basic repairs. As if on cue, Ambassador Reed's voice came from the bridge entrance. "Ah, Captain Walker. I trust your renovation efforts are proceeding as expected." Walker turned slowly, his face carefully neutral. "Yes, Ambassador. We're making progress, though it's challenging with our limited technology." The alien diplomat floated into the bridge, his anti-gravity belt humming softly. He looked around at the human equipment with poorly hidden disdain. "Indeed. The Council will be interested to hear how you're managing with such primitive solutions." Torres caught Walker's eye and quickly adjusted some settings on his tablet. The bridge lights dimmed slightly, and several screens flickered, making everything look less stable than it actually was. "We're doing our best with what we have," Walker said humbly. "Though we certainly appreciate any guidance you might offer." The ambassador waved a dismissive hand. "I'm afraid I have more pressing matters to attend to. The Council simply wanted me to verify that you were actually attempting to repair the vessel." He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Captain, do try not to damage it further with your experiments. The Council would be most displeased." After the ambassador left, Torres reset the bridge systems to their proper settings. He didn't even notice the rail gun mounts, or the modified sensor arrays, or the shield generators we've installed. "They see what they expect to see," Walker said. "And they expect us to fail." He stood and walked to the main viewport. "How are the crew quarters coming along?" "Finished yesterday. We've got room for twice the normal crew complement if we need it. And the mess hall's better than anything I had on Earth ships. Adams even managed to get real gravity plating working. No more magnetic boots needed." Walker nodded, still looking out at the hangar. "We're going to surprise a lot of people, Mike. This ship, what we're doing here, it's going to change everything." "That's the plan, isn't it?" Torres checked another set of readings on his tablet. "Oh, and we finished the exterior work this morning. Want to see? They went to the hangar's observation deck. The Phoenix's hull still showed its dents and scars, but now they looked almost intentional. The patchwork of different metals had been subtly rearranged, creating a pattern that broke up the ship's visual profile. The engine pods, once dead and dark, now pulsed with a soft blue light. "We left the outside looking rough on purpose," Torres explained. "Let them keep underestimating us. But every dent, every patch, every broken panel serves a purpose now. We've even got sensor bafflers built into some of those scared areas." Walker smiled. A wolf in sheep's clothing. More like a dragon pretending to be a jumped cargo hauler. Torres checked the time. "Speaking of which, the next power core test is in 10 minutes. Want to stick around and watch us hit 80%? Wouldn't miss it." Walker took a last look at his ship. Soon, very soon, they would show the galaxy what humanity could really do. But for now, let them watch in doubt. Let them think they'd put humanity in its place with their gift. The Phoenix would rise when it was ready, and not a moment before. The Phoenix moved silently through space, its scared hull reflecting the light of distant stars. In the captain's chair, Walker watched the main screen as they approached the trade route between the Centauri colonies and the main shipping lanes. Their first real mission was a simple one: show the flag and prove the ship could handle basic patrol duty. "Status report," Walker called out, his eyes fixed on the sensor readings. "All systems running at optimal levels," Torres reported from his engineering station. "Power core holding steady at 60%, more than enough for routine operations." The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. To anyone watching from the outside, the Phoenix looked like exactly what it was supposed to be: a barely functional hand-me-down struggling to prove itself useful. The dents and patches in its hull told a story of decay, not danger. The alarm came without warning. Multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Lieutenant Rogers called from the sensor station. 5, no, 7 vessels. They're not responding to identification requests." Walker leaned forward. "Show me." The main screen lit up with tactical data. The ships were arranged in an attack pattern, spreading out to cut off any escape routes. Their energy signatures matched known pirate vessels that had been raiding this sector for months. "They're charging weapons," Rogers reported. "They're targeting our engines first. They think we're a cargo hauler." Walker allowed himself a small smile. "Let them think that. Battle stations, but keep our weapons powered down. Let's see what they do first." The crew moved with practiced efficiency, taking their positions. Screens shifted to combat displays, but nothing showed on the outside of the ship. The Phoenix continued to drift, looking for all the world like easy prey. A harsh voice crackled over the comm system. "Attention, Earth vessel. Your ship is now our property. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resist, and we will destroy you." Walker pressed the comm button. "This is Captain Walker of the Earth ship Phoenix. We're a patrol vessel, not a cargo hauler. Power down your weapons and withdraw." Laughter answered him. "A patrol vessel? In that wreck? You humans are more foolish than we thought. Last warning. Power down now. All stations, battle ready," Walker ordered quietly. "But hold your fire until my command." The first pirate ship fired, their energy weapons flashing across space. The shots hit the Phoenix's hull and dissipated harmlessly. "No damage," Torres reported with satisfaction. "Their sensors show our hull as standard metal. They have no idea about the energy dispersal layers we built into those patches." 2 more ships opened fire, their weapons targeting the engine pods. Again, the shots seemed to do nothing more than scorch the already damaged-looking hull. "They're moving closer," Rogers reported, "preparing to launch boarding shuttles." Walker nodded. "Let them get in nice and close. Torres, are the cargo bay doors ready?" "Yes, sir." "They still think those are just battle damage." The pirate ships moved into position, surrounding the Phoenix. Their boarding shuttles detached, moving toward what they thought were vulnerable airlocks. "Now," Walker ordered. The Phoenix came alive. The supposedly damaged cargo bay doors snapped open, revealing rows of point defense lasers. The modified mining beams lashed out with surgical precision, cutting through the boarding shuttles like paper. Rail guns online, Torres called out. Target solutions ready. Target their engines, Walker commanded. Show them what primitive technology can do. The rail guns fired. There was no beam of light, no visible energy discharge, just the silent launch of metal projectiles accelerated to terrifying speeds. The first pirate ship's shields flared brilliantly as they tried to stop the kinetic rounds. They failed. The projectiles punched through, tearing into their engine section. Direct hit, Rogers called out. Their power grid is failing. They're dropping out of formation. The remaining pirates tried to regroup, but they'd lost their advantage. The Phoenix's true weapons were now fully powered, and its engines, far from being crippled, roared to life. Multiple targets attempting to flee, Rogers reported. 3 ships powering up their FTL drives. Oh, no, you don't, Walker said. Torres, show them our little surprise. Torres grinned and activated the gravity wave projectors they'd built into the hull's battle damage. The fleeing ships suddenly found themselves unable to enter FTL, caught in localized gravity distortions that played havoc with their drive systems. All ships, this is Captain Walker, he broadcast. Your vessels are disabled, your boarding parties are destroyed, and reinforcements are on the way. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. This time, we'll be the ones coming to you. The battle was over in less than 10 minutes. As security teams secured the pirate vessels, Walker received an urgent communication from the nearest Galactic Council outpost. Ambassador Reed's hologram appeared on the bridge, his expression a mixture of disbelief and suspicion. Captain Walker, we've received reports of weapons fire along the trade route. Your vessel was supposed to be conducting a simple patrol. Explain yourself. Walker gestured to the captured pirate ships visible behind him. Simply doing our duty, Ambassador. We encountered pirates and dealt with them. 7 ships captured, no casualties on either side. Will there be anything else? The ambassador's mouth opened and closed several times before he found his voice. 7 ships. That's impossible. Your vessel is a decommissioned cargo hauler. It barely functions. Apparently it functions well enough, Walker replied mildly. Though we appreciate your concern. Phoenix out. He cut the transmission before the ambassador could respond. Torres laughed from his station. Think they'll figure it out now? They'll certainly try, Walker said. But they'll be looking for advanced alien technology, hidden upgrades we shouldn't have. They won't understand that we simply took what they gave us and made it better. The crew spent the next few hours securing their prisoners and documenting the battle. Word spread quickly through the sector. A human ship, one that looked like space junk, had single-handedly captured 7 pirate vessels without taking any significant damage. Sir, Rogers called out later, we're getting unusual readings from the Council outpost. Multiple ships launching. I think they're coming to investigate. Walker nodded. Let them come. Torres, power everything down to minimal levels. Let's look nice and humble when they arrive. Playing wounded bird again? Torres asked with a grin. Something like that. Walker looked around his bridge, at the crew who had helped turn a piece of junk into one of the most effective fighting ships in the sector. They gave us exactly what they thought we deserved. It's not our fault they didn't understand what humans can do with a little inspiration and a lot of determination. The Phoenix drifted in space, its battle-scarred hull hiding its true nature. Soon, the Council ships would arrive, would scan and study, and try to understand how they'd been so wrong about humanity's capabilities. But they wouldn't find what they were looking for. The real secret wasn't in the technology. It was in the human spirit that had turned their insult into triumph. The inspection team from the Galactic Council moved through the Phoenix with scanner devices in hand, their expressions growing more frustrated by the minute. Captain Walker followed them, maintaining a helpful but confused appearance as they searched for secrets that weren't there. "I don't understand," the lead inspector said, waving his scanner at a perfectly ordinary wall panel. "Where are the weapon systems? The advanced shields? The technology you must have stolen to defeat those pirates?" Walker spread his hands innocently. "As you can see, we're just using basic systems. Everything here was either part of the original ship or built with Earth technology. Would you like to examine our engine room next?" The inspectors had been aboard for 6 hours, and they'd found nothing they could prove violated Council regulations. Every modification was documented. Every system was built with either salvaged parts or human technology. It wasn't their fault if no one had bothered to check what humans were capable of building. Torres met them in the engine room, carefully hiding his amusement as the inspectors searched for non-existent violations. "Careful near the power core," he warned. "We're running at minimal power, but the radiation shielding is still pretty basic by your standards." The lead inspector snorted. "Basic is an understatement. Your control systems are practically prehistoric." He turned to his team. "Check the secondary systems. There must be something we're missing." The Phoenix's crew went about their duties, pretending not to notice the increasingly agitated inspectors. Walker was about to suggest they take a break when the alert klaxon sounded. "Captain, to the bridge." Roger's voice came over the intercom. "Multiple hostile ships detected." Walker turned to the inspection team. "Gentlemen, you'll have to continue your work later. We have a situation." On the bridge, the tactical display showed 5 warships dropping out of FTL. Their design was unfamiliar, but their weapons were already charged. "Message coming in," Rogers reported. A harsh voice filled the bridge. "Earth vessel Phoenix, you have interfered with our operations in this sector. The loss of our pirate allies has cost us greatly. Prepare to be destroyed." The lead inspector stepped forward. "This is a Council inspection team. Stand down immediately." The only response was a barrage of energy weapons. The Phoenix rocked slightly as the shots impacted. "Minimal damage," Torres reported. "They're using standard energy weapons. Our hull modifications are holding." "Get those inspectors off my bridge," Walker ordered. "Lieutenant Rogers, battle stations. Torres, power up everything. They've already seen what we can do. No point hiding it now." As security led the protesting inspectors away, the Phoenix came alive. Power surged through systems that had been dormant during the inspection, and hidden weapons emerged from their concealment. "Enemy ships are spreading out," Rogers reported. "They're trying to surround us like the pirates did." Walker smiled grimly. "They did their homework. Too bad they learned the wrong lessons. Torres, show them our new tricks." The Phoenix's engines flared, but instead of trying to escape the encirclement, the ship drove straight at the nearest enemy vessel. The enemy commander, expecting them to behave like a normal patrol ship, was caught off guard. "Rail guns 1 through 3, target their bridge," Walker commanded. 4 through 6, target their engines. Fire when ready." The rail guns spoke, sending hypersonic projectiles streaking through space. The enemy ship's shields flared brilliantly and failed. Their advanced energy shields, designed to stop energy weapons, couldn't handle the simple kinetic force of metal slugs moving at relativistic speeds. "Direct hits," Rogers called out. "Enemy vessel is disabled." The remaining ships opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams and plasma bolts hammered the Phoenix, but its patchwork hull, now revealed as sophisticated armor, held firm. "They're trying to overload our shields," Torres reported from engineering. "But they don't realize we're not using standard shield configurations. Each hull plate is its own independent defense system. They can't overwhelm them all at once." Walker nodded. "Time to show them what else we've added." Deploy the drones. What the enemy had assumed were simple debris chunks attached to the Phoenix's hull suddenly detached and came to life. Dozens of small automated craft swarmed out, each carrying a miniaturized version of the mining laser point defense system. The drones attacked from multiple angles, their simple but effective weapons cutting through the enemy ship's own point defense systems. They weren't trying to destroy the ships, just disable their weapons and engines with precision strikes. "Sir," Rogers called out. Two more ships dropping out of FTL. They're Council warships. The Council vessels arrived just in time to see the Phoenix, the ship they'd dismissed as junk, systematically dismantling the superior force. The inspection team, watching from a secure compartment, couldn't believe their eyes. "This is impossible," the lead inspector muttered. "They're using mining lasers as weapons, cargo bay doors as shield generators, repair drones as attack craft. None of this should work." But it did work. Within minutes, the attacking ships were disabled, their crews surrendering to the combined forces of the Phoenix and the Council vessels. Ambassador Reed's hologram appeared on the bridge, his expression a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Captain Walker, you will explain these modifications immediately. This level of military technology was not authorized." Walker kept his voice calm. "Ambassador, we've broken no Council laws. Every system on this ship was either part of your original gift or built with human technology. If you'd like to discuss specific regulations we violated, I'll be happy to arrange another inspection." "Another?" the ambassador sputtered. "Captain, you've turned a cargo hauler into a warship more effective than vessels 10 times its size. This cannot be allowed." "Why not?" Walker asked simply. "Because we did it differently than you would have. Because we found solutions you never considered. The Council gave us this ship as a lesson in humility. We learned that lesson, but perhaps not the one you intended to teach." The ambassador's hologram flickered as he struggled to respond. Behind him, Walker could see other Council members gathering, their expressions ranging from concern to grudging respect. "This isn't over, Captain," Reed finally said. "The Council will need to reevaluate humanity's position after this incident." "We look forward to the discussion," Walker replied politely. Phoenix out. As the hologram faded, Torres looked up from his engineering station. "Think they'll try to take the ship from us?" Walker shook his head. "They can't. Not now. We've proven what we can do with their cast-offs. Imagine what they think we could do with actual military hardware." "Sir," Rogers called out, "we're getting messages from other Earth ships. They want to know how we modified our systems. Apparently, every human vessel in the sector is suddenly very interested in basic technology." Walker laughed. The Council had tried to put humanity in its place by giving them garbage. Instead, they'd given humanity exactly what it needed: a chance to prove that innovation and determination could overcome any technological gap. "Send them the specifications," he ordered. "Let's show everyone what humans can really do when someone tells us we can't do something." The Phoenix hung in space, its battle-scarred hull now a badge of honor rather than a mark of shame. They'd turned scrap into strength, insult into innovation. And this was just the beginning. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with activity. Representatives from 100 worlds gathered to discuss what many were now calling the Phoenix Incident. Captain Walker stood calmly at the center of the chamber, his dress uniform crisp and neat. Behind him, Engineer Torres shifted uncomfortably in his own formal wear. The council leader, a tall figure with silvery skin, raised his hand for silence. "We have reviewed the events of the past 3 months. The Phoenix, a vessel given to Earth as part of their integration into the galactic community, has become something unprecedented." Walker kept his face neutral as images appeared in the air around him. The Phoenix in battle, its supposedly primitive systems defeating advanced warships, the modified cargo bays transforming for different missions, the hybrid power core outputting energy levels that should have been impossible. In that time, the council leader continued, the Phoenix has captured 23 pirate vessels, prevented 4 raids on colonial worlds, and successfully defended itself against a military-grade attack force, all while using what we considered obsolete technology. Ambassador Reed stepped forward, his usual smugness replaced by a careful diplomatic smile. "The Council must consider the implications. Humanity has demonstrated unexpected capabilities." Unexpected. A voice called out from the gallery. A ship captain from one of the older races stood up. They'd done more than that. My crew studied the records of their battles. They're not just using the technology differently. They're using it better than we do. Murmurs filled the chamber. Walker glanced at Torres, who gave him a slight nod. They'd known this day would come ever since their first victory. Would the human captain explain his methods? The council leader asked. Walker stepped forward. There's nothing to explain that we haven't already shared. We took what you gave us and looked at it with fresh eyes. Where you saw limitations, we saw possibilities. He gestured to the images floating around them. You gave us a power core you thought was too primitive to be useful. We stripped away the overcomplicated control systems and found something remarkable underneath. You left mining lasers in the cargo bay because they were outdated. We turned them into one of the most effective point defense systems in the galaxy. Torres added, every modification we made is documented. Every system we built uses either parts from the original ship or technology we developed on Earth. We didn't break any rules. We just solved problems differently than you would have. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some representatives argued for restrictions on human innovation. Others demanded access to Earth's engineering techniques. Through it all, Walker and Torres stood quietly, waiting. Finally, an elderly member of one of the founding races stood up. I remembered, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. When our own races were young. When we solved problems with creativity instead of relying on established solutions. Perhaps we have forgotten something important. The council leader nodded slowly. Indeed, Captain Walker, your ship was meant to teach humanity humility. Instead, you have taught us a valuable lesson. The council recognizes that we may have underestimated Earth's potential. We're not asking for advanced technology, Walker replied. We're not even asking for an apology. All we want is to be treated as equals, to contribute what we can to the galactic community in our own way. And what way is that? Ambassador Reed asked, unable to keep a slight edge from his voice. Torres stepped forward. By remembering that the simplest solution is often the best, by not letting our tools think for us, by keeping backup systems that don't need computers to work. He smiled, and by never assuming that something is worthless just because it's not the latest model. The council spent hours deliberating. When they finally reached their decision, it wasn't what anyone had expected. The council leader stood. We hereby establish a new division within the Galactic Defense Force. The Phoenix and its crew will lead a joint training program, teaching their methods to ships from all member worlds. Additionally, Earth will receive full access to galactic technology, not because they need it, but because they've earned it. Ambassador Reed looked like he'd swallowed something sour, but he nodded in agreement. The Council recognizes that different approaches have value. Earth's methods, while unconventional, have proven highly effective. As they left the chamber, Torres grinned at Walker. Think they'll ever admit they were trying to insult us with that ship? They don't need to, Walker replied. The results speak for themselves. Back on the Phoenix, the crew gathered in the mess hall to celebrate. The ship that had been meant as a joke was now officially recognized as one of the most effective vessels in known space. More importantly, it had opened doors for all of humanity. Message from Earth Command, Rogers called out. They're starting production on 5 more ships using our modifications. They're calling it the Phoenix class. Walker looked around at his crew, at the ship that had become so much more than anyone expected. The scared hull now bore its damage proudly, each dent and patch telling a story of human ingenuity and determination. You know, Torres said thoughtfully, we could probably make her even better now that we have access to advanced technology. Walker shook his head. We'll keep her exactly as she is. Let her stand as a reminder that it's not about having the best technology. It's about how you use what you have. The Phoenix's story spread throughout the galaxy. Other races began studying Earth's primitive solutions, learning that sometimes the old ways, the simple ways, were still valuable. Some even started stripping down their own ships, replacing complex systems with more reliable alternatives. In the end, the Council's attempt to humble humanity had backfired completely. They'd wanted to teach humans their place in the galaxy. Instead, humans had taught the galaxy that true advancement wasn't just about having the newest technology. It was about understanding the technology you had and using it creatively. The Phoenix continued to patrol the space lanes, its scared hull and jury-rigged systems now a source of pride rather than shame. It stood as living proof that with enough determination and ingenuity, even scraps could become something extraordinary. And if sometimes Ambassador Reed passed the ship in his sleek diplomatic vessel and remembered his own smug certainty about humanity's limitations, well, that was just an added bonus.
The drive to the cabin was supposed to clear Jack Travers's head. He'd imagined himself cruising along the winding mountain roads, watching the sun dip behind jagged peaks, while the scent of pine mingled with the crisp, high-altitude air. Instead, his car's stereo was stuck on static, the heating system smelled like burnt socks, and every curve of the road seemed hell-bent on spilling his travel mug of lukewarm coffee into his lap. "This is it," he muttered, slowing the car as the rickety wooden sign for Cedar Hollow appeared, half hidden by vines. It wasn't much of a town, just a gas station, a diner, and a post office run by a guy named Dale, who always seemed mildly suspicious of anyone mailing more than one package at a time, but it was the last speck of civilization before the wilderness. Jack squinted through his windshield as the road turned rough, bumping and jostling his car. The forest pressed in on either side, dark and dense, the towering pines giving way only for the occasional sliver of moonlight. It had been years since he'd come to the cabin. Work, relationships, and life's general chaos had kept him tethered to the city. Now, burned out from late nights coding for a company that treated him like an overworked algorithm, he was desperate for a reset. "I need this," Jack said aloud, as if convincing himself. But as he rounded the last bend, his heart skipped a beat. The cabin was there just as he remembered it, tucked into a clearing at the edge of a slope, but something was wrong. The windows, which should have been dark and cold, were glowing faintly. A warm, pulsating light spilled out from behind the curtains, casting strange, shifting patterns onto the porch. Jack slammed on the brakes, his car skidding slightly on the gravel. Okay, what the hell? For a moment he sat frozen, his hands gripping the wheel. He hadn't told anyone he was coming here. The cabin was too remote for squatters to stumble across it, and he couldn't imagine the local wildlife had suddenly developed a taste for interior decorating. Then a thought struck him. "Maybe it's Dale," he whispered, though the idea of the grumpy postmaster setting up camp in his cabin was almost more absurd than what he was seeing. Grabbing his flashlight and his phone, just in case he needed to call the police or, more realistically, Dale, Jack got out of the car. The forest was eerily silent. Even the usual sounds of chirping crickets and rustling leaves seemed to have vanished, replaced by a faint hum, low and resonant, that seemed to come from the direction of the cabin. "Great," Jack muttered. "I came out here to escape stress, and now I'm walking into a horror movie." As he approached the cabin, he crouched behind a tree, peering at the scene ahead. Through a small gap in the curtains, he could see movement, shadows dancing in a rhythmic, almost fluid way. He couldn't make out any details, but the light was unlike anything he'd ever seen. It wasn't just shining, it was alive, pulsing in waves, as if the cabin itself was breathing. Jack shifted slightly, and his foot snapped a twig. The shadows inside froze. "Nice one, Travers," he muttered, heart pounding. Before he could decide whether to retreat or charge in swinging his flashlight like a weapon, the front door creaked open. Jack held his breath, expecting, well, he didn't know what to expect. A bear? An axe-wielding maniac? Dale with a lantern and a sandwich? What he saw was none of those things. A figure stepped into the doorway, silhouetted against the glowing interior. It was humanoid, but there was something off. The proportions were just slightly wrong, too tall, too elegant, with limbs that moved in a way that was both graceful and unsettling. Then the figure turned, and Jack got a glimpse of its face. Or her face, he realized. It was definitely feminine, but alien in the truest sense of the word. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver, catching the faint light in iridescent waves. Her eyes were large and without pupils, glowing faintly with a soft, golden hue. Her hair, or at least what looked like hair, floated gently around her head, as if caught in an invisible breeze. Jack's first coherent thought was, "This is not happening." His second thought was, "I really should have brought more coffee." The alien woman tilted her head, as if listening to something he couldn't hear. Then, with a startling swiftness, she darted back inside, slamming the door shut behind her. "Okay," Jack whispered to himself, backing up a step. "So, not Dale." Despite every instinct screaming at him to leave, Jack found himself edging closer to the cabin. His curiosity warred with his fear, and curiosity was winning. He reached the porch, his heart hammering in his chest. The hum was louder now, almost like a low-frequency vibration that he could feel in his bones. Tentatively, he pressed his ear against the wooden door. "Seriously?" The voice startled him so badly that he yelped and nearly fell off the porch. Spinning around, he found himself face to face with the alien woman, who had somehow snuck outside without making a sound. She stared at him, unblinking, her glowing eyes narrowing slightly. Jack raised his hands, palms out. Hi. I live here?" The woman tilted her head again, this time with what he swore was an expression of exasperation. She said something, but the sound that came out was like a mix of musical tones and static, utterly incomprehensible. Jack blinked. "Sorry, I don't speak whatever that is." She sighed, a universal gesture it seemed, and reached into a pouch at her side. Pulling out a small, disc-like device, she pressed a button, and a burst of holographic symbols hovered in the air between them. The device emitted a short burst of static before a robotic voice translated, "Leave." "Dangerous." Jack frowned. "Dangerous? What's dangerous?" The alien woman pointed emphatically at him, then at herself, then back at the cabin. "Oh, great," Jack said, throwing up his hands. "I drive 5 hours to get away from life's insanity, and now there's a glowing space lady telling me to leave my own cabin. This is fine. Totally normal." The woman stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then, to Jack's astonishment, she rolled her eyes, an unmistakable gesture of shared frustration. "Well," Jack said, lowering his hands and attempting a weak smile, "since we're both having a bad night, how about we start over? Hi, I'm Jack. You are—" The alien hesitated, then pressed another button on her device. "Lyra," the robotic voice translated. Jack nodded. "Lyra. Nice to meet you, I guess." He paused, glancing at the glowing cabin. "So, why are you in my house?" Lyra sighed again, but this time there was something almost human about it. With a resigned wave of her hand, she gestured for Jack to follow her inside. As he stepped through the doorway, Jack realized 2 things. First, the interior of his cabin was almost unrecognizable, transformed into a strange high-tech sanctuary filled with glowing orbs, floating panels, and a peculiar humming device in the corner that looked suspiciously like it could explode. Second, whatever he'd just walked into, it was about to turn his entire life upside down. "Great," he muttered under his breath. "Should have just stayed at Dale's." Jack stood in the middle of what was once his rustic, cozy mountain getaway. The log walls and worn furniture were still there, somewhere, but they'd been overtaken by glowing, humming, and downright incomprehensible alien technology. Strange, translucent panels floated in mid-air, displaying shifting symbols that reminded him of a hyperactive screensaver. The air was warmer, thicker, and smelled faintly of ozone and— was that mint? His gaze landed on a spherical device in the corner, softly humming and emitting a pulsing golden light. "That thing," Jack muttered, pointing at it, "looks like it's about 5 seconds away from either exploding or summoning a demon." Lyra, standing by the device with an expression that screamed, "I regret everything," tapped her translator again. Not explosion. Stabilizer. Jack blinked. Oh, great. A stabilizer. Because that clears everything up. Lyra tilted her head in what he was starting to recognize as her version of a sarcastic eye roll. She pressed a button on the stabilizer, and the hum lowered a pitch. The glowing panels flickered and rearranged themselves, revealing more of the cabin's original interior. "That's my recliner," Jack said, pointing at the corner now partially visible. "And my coffee table. Glad to see they survived. Whatever this is." Lyra ignored him, focused on adjusting a sequence of controls that floated in the air before her. Her silver, almost liquid-like skin shimmered faintly as she worked. Jack tried not to stare, but it was hard not to. Everything about her was fascinating and terrifying. "So," he said after a moment, his voice intentionally casual, "you want to tell me why my cabin looks like a set from Star Trek?" She paused, glancing at him, then pressed another button on her translator. The robotic voice responded, "Refuge. Hiding. Emergency." Jack folded his arms. "Right. Emergency. That's pretty vague. Did you, crash your spaceship nearby or something?" Lyra hesitated, as if deciding how much to tell him. Finally, she motioned toward a small, flickering hologram that appeared above the stabilizer. It was a schematic of a sleek, elongated vessel with jagged edges that gave it an almost predatory look. Parts of the ship were highlighted in red, clearly indicating damage. "That's your ship?" Jack asked. "Was," the translator replied. "Wait." Jack held up a hand. "You're telling me that thing crashed here? How? I didn't hear anything. No big explosions, no sonic booms, nothing." Lyra pointed toward the schematic, then made a motion with her hand that resembled a slow fade-out. The translator chimed. "Silent entry. Cloaking. Minimal impact." "Of course," Jack muttered, "because if aliens are going to crash on Earth, they'll do it politely." Lyra didn't laugh, but there was a faint twitch at the corner of her mouth. "Okay," Jack said, pacing now. "So your ship crashed. And instead of, I don't know, phoning home or finding another planet, you decided to break into my cabin and turn it into your own personal tech lab." "Isolated," the translator replied. "Safe. No threat." Jack stopped mid-step. "No threat? Are you saying I'm harmless?" Lyra nodded, her golden eyes scanning him briefly before returning to her controls. "Wow," Jack said, feigning offense. "You meet me for 5 minutes and you've already decided I'm no threat? I'll have you know I was very intimidating in high school." The translator didn't bother responding to that. Jack sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, I get it. You've got problems. You needed a place to crash, literally. But this is still my cabin. You can't just invade it." At the word invade, Lyra stiffened. Her glowing eyes narrowed, and her posture shifted ever so slightly, as if preparing for something. Jack immediately backpedaled. "Not like that," he said quickly. "I mean, you're not invading like an alien invasion or anything, right? You're just borrowing." She relaxed slightly, but there was a tension in the air now that Jack couldn't ignore. "Okay," he said, holding up his hands. "How about this? You tell me why you're here, and I promise not to freak out. Deal?" Lyra hesitated again, then pressed another button on her translator. "Fleeing. Pursued." Jack frowned. "Pursued? By who?" The translator emitted a series of clicks and static, followed by the word, "Hunters." "Hunters?" Jack repeated. "Like alien bounty hunters? That's a thing?" Lyra nodded solemnly. Jack let out a low whistle. "Well, that's just great. My cabin isn't just an alien Airbnb, it's the hideout for a fugitive. I'm guessing these hunters don't care much about property damage, huh?" Lyra shook her head. Jack sank into his recliner, staring at the ceiling. "You know, I came out here to relax, get away from stress, maybe write a book or learn how to whittle or something. Instead, I've got glowing space tech and intergalactic bad guys on my doorstep. Fantastic." Lyra watched him for a moment, then pressed a few more buttons on her translator. "Not safe," it said. "Must leave." "Yeah, I got that part," Jack said. "But here's the thing. I can't just leave. This is my place. I don't exactly have a second cabin lying around." The translator responded with a flat, robotic monotone. "Regret." Jack chuckled despite himself. "Oh, now you feel bad? That's comforting." Lyra tilted her head, clearly not understanding the sarcasm. "All right," Jack said, standing up. "If we're stuck with each other for now, we might as well figure out a way to keep this place from getting blown to bits by your hunters. Got any ideas?" Lyra hesitated, then tapped a sequence on one of the glowing panels. A holographic display appeared, showing a cluster of small, sleek ships circling the area near the cabin. The translator chimed, "Scouts. Searching." Jack swallowed hard. "How long until they find you? Or us, I guess." Lyra didn't respond directly. Instead, she pointed to the stabilizer, then to the golden pulsing device in the corner. The translator said, "Incomplete. Need time." Jack stared at her. "You're fixing some kind of—" "What? An alien power core? A cloaking device?" "Both," the translator replied. "Of course," Jack muttered. "Why not make it more complicated? While you're at it, can you also install a hot tub? Maybe a pizza oven?" Lyra gave him a blank look, which was somehow more unnerving than an actual glare. "Never mind," Jack said, rubbing his temples. "The point is, we're on a clock, right? We have to finish whatever this is before they find us." Lyra nodded. "All right," Jack said, forcing himself to stay calm. "Let's do this. You tell me what you need and I'll help. But for the record, if your hunters show up and start blasting holes in my cabin, you're paying for the repairs." The translator chirped. "Agree." Jack stared at her, unsure if she was serious or just humoring him. Either way, he had a feeling his quiet weekend getaway was about to get a whole lot louder and weirder. Jack woke the next morning to the soft rhythmic hum of alien machinery and a vague sense of dread. He squinted against the golden light filtering through the window, or more accurately, through what used to be a window. It was now some kind of shimmering force field that hummed when he poked it the night before. He hadn't slept well, thanks to dreams of glowing-eyed hunters blasting his cabin into splinters. "Morning," Jack muttered, dragging himself off the couch. He hadn't dared sleep in his bed, which had been thoroughly commandeered by a floating dome-shaped contraption that looked suspiciously like a high-tech coffee maker. Lyra was already awake, or did she even sleep, and standing by the stabilizer, her delicate hands moving with lightning speed over a holographic interface. Her shimmering silver skin caught the morning light, making her look more like a sculpture than a person. "Do aliens even do mornings?" Jack asked, running a hand through his bedhead. Lyra glanced at him but didn't respond. Her translator device was lying on the table next to a bowl of half-eaten cereal. Jack stared at it. "Wait," he said, pointing. "Did you eat that? Or did my cabin just conjure up floating tech and a ghost that likes frosted flakes?" Lyra picked up the translator and pressed a button. The robotic voice replied, "Tried." "Insufficient." Jack blinked. "What do you mean, insufficient? That's a perfectly good breakfast." The translator buzzed again. "Primitive." Jack put a hand to his chest, feigning offense. "Excuse me, Princess Space Lady, but those are name-brand flakes. They even have marshmallows. Primitive, my foot." Lyra didn't seem amused. She motioned to a sleek device on the counter that Jack hadn't noticed before. It looked like a blender had been fused with a glowing lava lamp. Inside was a swirling, iridescent liquid. "That," Jack said, pointing, "is either your breakfast or the thing that's going to kill me when it inevitably explodes." The translator replied, "Nutrition synthesis." "Safe." Jack grabbed a nearby mug and held it up. "I'll stick to coffee, thanks." He paused. "Wait, do aliens drink coffee? Please tell me you have coffee in space." Lyra stared at him blankly. "No coffee," Jack muttered. "Figures. You've got spaceships and cloaking tech, but no coffee. What a tragedy." Before Lyra could respond, or roll her eyes again, a sharp beeping sound filled the cabin. She froze, her golden eyes narrowing as she spun toward a floating control panel. Jack tensed. "That's not the good kind of beep, is it?" Lyra didn't need the translator for him to know the answer. She tapped furiously on the controls, and a holographic display appeared. On it, a cluster of glowing red dots moved in formation, converging on a central point, the cabin. Jack felt his stomach drop. "Let me guess. Those are the hunters?" The translator replied, "Scouts. Proximity increasing." "Great," Jack muttered, grabbing his jacket. "Time to pack up and oh wait, this is my house, I can't leave." Lyra motioned for him to stay quiet, then pressed a button on the stabilizer. The hum in the air grew louder, and the cabin's glowing panels began to shift and rearrange themselves. The walls shimmered, and the force field over the windows flickered before solidifying again. "Are we cloaking?" Jack asked, his voice rising with hope. The translator replied, "Masking. Temporary." "Temporary?" Jack repeated. "Define temporary. Like 5 minutes? 5 hours? Should I start digging a hole and hiding in it?" Lyra ignored him, her focus entirely on the stabilizer. Jack groaned and ran a hand through his hair. "Fantastic. I came out here to escape stress, and now I'm playing hide-and-seek with alien bounty hunters. My therapist is gonna love this." The holographic display shifted, showing the red dots moving closer. Jack leaned over to get a better look, accidentally knocking over a small alien device. It hit the floor with a metallic clink, and Lyra shot him a glare that needed no translation. "Sorry," Jack whispered, picking it up. "But maybe if you labeled this stuff, I wouldn't—" The device in his hand lit up, and a thin, high-pitched whine filled the air. Jack froze. "That's bad, isn't it?" he asked. The translator buzzed, "Destructive." Jack's eyes widened. "Destructive? As in boom?" Lyra snatched the device from his hand and pressed a sequence of buttons. The whine faded, and Jack let out a shaky breath. "Okay," he said, backing away from the table. "I'm officially on a strict don't-touch-anything policy. Happy?" Lyra didn't respond, but the faintest smirk tugged at the corner of her lips. The tension was broken, albeit briefly, by another series of beeps from the control panel. Lyra's smirk vanished as she tapped the panel again. The holographic display zoomed in on the scouts, now dangerously close. Jack felt a bead of sweat roll down his temple. "So, what's the plan here? Do we fight them? Hide? Bake them cookies and hope they leave us alone?" Lyra pressed a button, and the translator replied, "Divert." "Divert?" Jack echoed. "How do we—" Before he could finish, Lyra activated another device, and the stabilizer pulsed brightly. A burst of golden light shot into the sky, fading as quickly as it appeared. The translator buzzed. "Signal. False trail." Jack frowned. "Wait, you just sent out a fake signal? Like an intergalactic decoy?" Lyra nodded. "That's genius," Jack admitted, then paused. "Unless, of course, they figure it out and come back angrier. Which they will, because my luck is terrible." The translator chimed. "Likelihood minimal." "Minimal?" Jack said, raising an eyebrow. "I'd like that in writing, please." The holographic display updated, showing the red dots hesitating, then breaking off in a new direction, toward the decoy signal. Jack let out a relieved sigh and collapsed into his recliner. "Well, that was fun," he said sarcastically. "Let's do it again sometime." Lyra powered down the stabilizer, the hum lowering to a soft purr. She glanced at Jack, her expression unreadable before turning back to her controls. Jack watched her for a moment, then said, "You know, if you're going to keep crashing here, we need some ground rules. Like, maybe warn me before you turn my cabin into a glowing spaceship hideout, and definitely no more destructive devices on my coffee table." The translator buzzed. "Understood." Jack smirked. "Progress." But as he leaned back, his gaze drifted to the holographic display. The red dots were gone for now, but something told him this wasn't over. The hunters might be chasing a false trail, but they'd be back. And when they came, Jack had no idea if he or Lyra would be ready. For now, though, he'd take the win. After the scouts disappeared, Jack convinced himself he could finally relax. He grabbed a chair from the kitchen, dragged it to the porch, and sat down with a mug of black coffee, his personal talisman against chaos. The fresh mountain air, scented with pine and damp earth, worked its magic for all of 30 seconds before Lyra appeared in the doorway. "Seriously?" Jack said, looking over his shoulder. "I thought aliens were supposed to be stealthy. Can't I have one moment of peace?" She didn't respond, but her translator, now clipped to her belt, chimed, "Work. Assistance required." Jack groaned. "Look, I'm not exactly NASA. Whatever alien genius project you're working on, I'm pretty sure I'll just make it worse." "Incorrect," the translator replied with annoying certainty. Jack sipped his coffee, glaring at her. "Let me guess. You need me to press a glowing button, and if I press the wrong one, the cabin turns into a black hole." Lyra's expression didn't change, but he caught the faintest twitch of her silver eyebrows. Was that amusement? He wasn't sure, but it was enough to pique his curiosity. "Fine," Jack said, standing and setting his mug on the porch rail. "Lead the way, Space Princess." Inside, the cabin was more chaotic than ever. The stabilizer now had several new attachments, floating, spinning discs that emitted soft, rhythmic beeps. Another panel projected a map of the surrounding area, dotted with strange, flickering symbols. "What am I even looking at?" Jack asked, gesturing to the map. "Proximity grid," the translator replied. "Detects incoming threats." Jack frowned. "Great. So, it's like an alien Ring doorbell. Does it also record video of bears stealing my trash cans?" Lyra ignored him and pointed to a smaller device on the table. It was the size of a shoebox, covered in glowing runes that shifted and shimmered like liquid. "Repair," the translator said. "Repair what?" Jack asked. "Your ship? Your cloaking device? My sanity?" "Core stabilizer," the translator replied. "Malfunction imminent." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Imminent? As in, hurry up and fix it, or we're toast?" Lyra nodded. "Well, that's just fantastic," Jack muttered, leaning closer to the device. "What exactly do you need me to do? I don't speak alien, and I'm pretty sure duct tape isn't going to cut it." Lyra tapped a sequence on the stabilizer, and a holographic diagram appeared. It showed the device's internal components, overlaid with blinking red lines that clearly indicated something was wrong. She pointed to a specific section, then handed Jack a tool that looked like a cross between a screwdriver and a plasma torch. "Adjust," the translator said. Jack hesitated, staring at the tool. "Adjust what? This thing? What if I accidentally turn it into a bomb?" "Minimal risk," the translator replied. Jack's jaw dropped. "Minimal risk? That's not exactly comforting." Lyra stepped back, crossing her arms as if to say, "Get on with it." Jack sighed and crouched by the device, squinting at the glowing runes. "All right," he muttered. "Let's see, twist this? No, wait, maybe it's—" The device emitted a sharp beep, and Jack froze. "Okay, that's either good or very, very bad. Which is it?" Lyra leaned over his shoulder, adjusted a knob, and the beeping stopped. Jack let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Teamwork," the translator said, almost smugly. Yeah, Jack grumbled. "You're welcome." A few hours later, the repairs were complete, or so Lyra claimed. Jack didn't fully trust the glowing contraption, but he figured if it hadn't exploded yet, it was probably fine. He slumped onto the couch, exhausted. "So," he said, watching Lyra as she tinkered with yet another device. "What happens now? You fix your ship, fly off into the sunset, and I go back to pretending aliens don't exist?" Lyra hesitated, her golden eyes flicking to him before she pressed her translator. "Complicated." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Complicated how?" Are you staying? Because I'm going to need to charge rent. The translator buzzed. Hunters persistent. Risk remains. Jack sighed. Of course, because nothing's ever simple. Lyra pressed another button on the translator, and it emitted a series of clicks and whistles. A moment later it said, "Assistance required." Jack blinked. "Wait, you need my help? Are you sure you've got the right guy?" The translator replied, "Affirmative." Jack chuckled, shaking his head. "Lady, I'm a guy who gets winded walking up a flight of stairs. What could I possibly do to help you fight alien bounty hunters?" Lyra pointed to the proximity grid, which now displayed several faint red dots on the edge of the map. Jack's stomach sank. "Don't tell me they're back." "Scouts," the translator said. "Testing perimeter." Jack rubbed his temples. "Okay, so what's the plan? Because I'm not exactly equipped to deal with this. The closest thing I have to a weapon is a bear spray can, and I'm pretty sure that won't work on aliens." Lyra didn't respond. Instead, she activated another holographic display, showing a sleek, handheld device that resembled a high-tech stun gun. "Whoa," Jack said, leaning closer. "Is that what I think it is?" "Defensive," the translator said. "Non-lethal." Jack stared at her. "You're giving me an alien weapon?" Lyra nodded and handed him the device. It was surprisingly light, and the grip molded perfectly to his hand. "All right," Jack said, testing the weight. "I'll admit this is kinda cool, but you realize I have no idea how to use it, right?" Lyra stepped closer, pressing a sequence on the translator. It said, "Training required." Jack groaned. "Great. Alien boot camp. Just what I needed." For the next hour, Lyra put Jack through what could only be described as a crash course in alien defense tactics. He learned how to activate the stun gun. Turns out the glowing button wasn't decorative. Aim it at moving targets, he missed most of them, and avoid accidentally stunning himself. He failed once. By the end of the session, Jack was sweating, sore, and more than a little frustrated. "You know," he said, leaning against the wall, "I always thought if I ever got to use an alien weapon, it'd be to save the world or something. Not because I'm trying to protect my cabin from intergalactic repo men." Lyra didn't laugh, but she gave him a look that was almost sympathetic. "Thanks for the pep talk," Jack muttered. "Real inspiring." The proximity grid beeped again, and both of them turned toward it. The red dots were closer now, moving in an erratic searching pattern. Jack tightened his grip on the stun gun. "Well," he said, forcing a grin, "looks like it's showtime. Let's see if all that training pays off, or if I'm about to become the first guy in history to get zapped by his own alien sidekick." Lyra stepped forward, her golden eyes focused and unflinching. For the first time, Jack saw a flicker of something deeper in her expression. Determination, maybe even fear. Whatever happened next, he had a feeling life in the mountains would never be the same again. The proximity grid's incessant beeping filled the cabin, each pulse like a countdown ticking closer to disaster. Jack peered over Lyra's shoulder as she studied the display, her golden eyes narrowing in concentration. "Okay," Jack said, shifting nervously from foot to foot. "What's the plan, Commander Silverskin? Please tell me it involves a foolproof way to make them go away, preferably without me getting fried like a bug in a zapper." Lyra didn't glance at him. Her fingers danced across the stabilizer's holographic interface, pulling up a series of glowing symbols and diagrams that looked like alien hieroglyphs. The translator finally responded, "Engage minimally. Delay pursuit." Jack threw his hands up. "Oh, great. That's not vague at all. How about I just stand on the porch and yell, 'Shoo, alien hunters'? Would that work?" Lyra tilted her head, giving him a look that was both patient and exasperated, like a teacher explaining something for the third time to a particularly slow student. "Fine," Jack grumbled, gripping the alien stun gun she had given him. "But for the record, I'm more of a runaway and live another day kind of guy." The plan, if you could call it that, started with Jack stationed near the back door while Lyra manned the stabilizer. She had activated what she called a localized distortion field, which, according to her translator, would scramble the hunter's sensors and slow them down. To Jack, it mostly just made the air around the cabin hum ominously, like a microwave on the verge of exploding. "What happens if this field thing backfires?" Jack asked, poking the shimmering air near the doorframe. "Are we talking a minor glitch, or like kaboom?" The translator buzzed. "Energy discharge possible. Radius, 100 meters. Jack froze. 100 meters? That's not a minor glitch. That's a fireworks show. Why didn't you lead with that?" "Probability low," the translator added. "Oh, well, that's reassuring," Jack muttered, taking several steps away from the distortion field. "Low probability, just like low chances of rain, right before it pours." Lyra, seemingly unbothered by his ranting, activated another set of controls. This time, a holographic image of the approaching scouts appeared, projected in midair. The 3 red dots now had shapes, sleek insectoid crafts that hovered unnervingly close to the treetops. Jack squinted at the display. "Are those drones? Please tell me those are drones and not like flying aliens with laser eyes." "Remotely operated," the translator confirmed. "Autonomous search units." Jack groaned. "Fantastic, because regular hunters weren't bad enough. You had to bring robots into this." As the first drone broke through the tree line, Jack's nerves hit a new high. The sleek, beetle-like craft emitted a low buzzing sound as it hovered near the cabin, scanning the area with a pulsating red light. "Okay," Jack whispered, clutching the stun gun tightly. "This is it. Showtime. Remember, Jack, aim, fire, don't hit yourself." Before he could psych himself out any further, the drone tilted toward the distortion field, its sensors visibly flickering. The field worked as promised, distorting its data stream, but the drone wasn't retreating. Instead, it seemed to be recalibrating. Lyra," Jack hissed. "Your fancy field is great and all, but it's not exactly scaring them off." Lyra responded by activating a second device, a small, spherical gadget that rolled to the center of the room before rising into the air. It emitted a sharp, high-frequency sound that made Jack wince. "What's that supposed to do?" Jack asked, covering his ears. The translator buzzed. "Countermeasure. Disrupts drone communication." Jack watched as the drone faltered midair, its red light flickering erratically. For a moment, it looked like the plan might actually work. But then, the drone emitted a sharp, mechanical screech and launched a bright, sizzling beam straight at the cabin. The beam hit the porch railing, reducing it to a smoldering pile of ash. "Yup, that's my cue to panic," Jack yelled, diving for cover. Lyra moved with inhuman speed, her silver form a blur as she activated the cabin's defensive measures. Panels on the wall shifted, revealing hidden emitters that began firing bursts of golden energy at the drones. "Wait, you had lasers this whole time?" Jack shouted over the noise. "Why didn't you lead with that?" The translator didn't bother replying. Jack peeked out from behind an overturned chair, watching as one of the drones spiraled out of control, its hull glowing red-hot from the laser fire. It crashed into the ground with a satisfying explosion. "Okay, 1 down," Jack muttered. 2 to go. No problem, right? His confidence evaporated as the second drone swooped toward the cabin, dodging the lasers with unsettling precision. Its buzzing grew louder, almost angry, as it fired another beam. This one hit the stabilizer, sending sparks flying. "Lyra!" Jack yelled. "Your magical spacebox thingy just got fried. Is that bad? That's bad, isn't it?" Lyra didn't respond, her focus entirely on the remaining drones. Jack took a deep breath and clutched his stun gun, deciding that if he was going to die, he might as well go out swinging, or in this case, zapping. The second drone was closing in when Jack spotted a loose plank from the destroyed porch railing. Acting on pure adrenaline, and probably a little stupidity, he grabbed the plank and hurled it at the drone. To his utter surprise, The plank struck the drone's sensor array, sending it veering wildly off course. It smashed into a tree, where it exploded in a shower of sparks. Jack stared at the wreckage, his mouth hanging open. Did I just take out a drone with a piece of wood? The translator buzzed. Improbable success. Yeah, no kidding, Jack muttered, still in shock. The third drone, however, was not impressed. It darted toward the cabin, its red light glowing brighter. Jack raised his stun gun, fumbling to aim as the drone lined up for an attack. Any time now, Lyra, he shouted. At the last second, Lyra activated the countermeasure device again, this time amplifying its frequency. The drone faltered, its systems overloading, before it dropped to the ground like a stone. As silence finally returned to the cabin, Jack slumped against the wall, his heart pounding. Okay, he said, panting. Let's all agree that was way too close. Lyra didn't respond, but there was a faint flicker of relief in her golden eyes as she deactivated the distortion field. Jack looked at the smoldering wreckage outside and shook his head. So much for a quiet weekend in the mountains. I'm pretty sure this cabin has seen more action in the last 24 hours than I have in my entire life. The translator buzzed. Exaggeration noted. Jack snorted. Oh, great. Now the translator's a comedian. Lyra glanced at him, her expression softening ever so slightly. For a moment, Jack thought he saw a hint of gratitude in her gaze. Don't mention it, he said, waving her off. But next time, maybe give me a heads up before the flying death robots show up, okay? The translator replied simply, Acknowledged. Jack sighed, rubbing his temples. I swear, if I survive this, I'm writing a survival guide. How to not die when an alien moves into your cabin. Think it'll sell. For the first time, Lyra's lips quirked upward in what might have been a smile. The cabin was finally quiet. Well, as quiet as a building could be after surviving an alien drone attack, a porch vaporization, and the unmistakable aroma of burning circuitry. Jack sat on the couch with a half-empty mug of reheated coffee, staring at the smoldering remains of what used to be his backyard. I've got to hand it to you, Jack said, breaking the silence. When you crash into someone's life, you really commit. Lyra stood at the stabilizer, running diagnostics while her translator hovered at her hip. She didn't glance back at him, but the translator buzzed, Assessment unclear. Jack smirked. It means you're great at causing chaos, Space Princess. Top-notch work. Gold medal. The translator didn't respond this time, and Jack took another sip of his lukewarm coffee. Despite his sarcasm, he couldn't deny the faint buzz of adrenaline still coursing through him. Somehow they'd survived the drones. He should have been celebrating. Instead, he couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get worse. Yet the stabilizer beeped, and Lyra frowned, or at least Jack thought it was a frown. Her face was so unreadable most of the time that he'd started assigning her expressions like an alien poker game. Bad news? Jack asked, setting his mug down. The translator chimed, Defensive grid compromised. Pursuers likely escalating. Jack groaned, leaning back on the couch. Of course they are, because life in the middle of nowhere wasn't already exciting enough. Assistance required, the translator added. Jack pointed at himself. Me? What do you think I'm going to do? Build a spaceship out of duct tape and desperation? Lyra finally turned to him, her golden eyes steady. She gestured toward the stabilizer, then to the holographic map that now displayed a larger grid, one that included the entire region. A series of red markers pulsed ominously, surrounding the area like a noose tightening around the cabin. Jack blinked. Wait, are those more drones? Hunter vessels, the translator corrected. Oh, terrific, Jack said, throwing his hands up. Not just drones, now we've got ships. What's next? A mothership with its own theme music. The translator offered no snarky retort this time, which only made Jack more nervous. The plan, or as Jack referred to it, the please don't get me killed scheme, was simple in theory. They needed to activate a long-range communications device hidden inside Lyra's damaged ship to send out a distress signal. The catch? The ship's wreckage was located 3 miles away, deep in the forest, and it was almost certainly being watched. "Let me get this straight," Jack said, as Lyra adjusted the straps on his makeshift tactical backpack. "We're hiking through alien-infested woods to turn on a glowing beacon, which will probably make us even bigger targets. Does that about sum it up?" "Affirmative," the translator replied. Jack sighed. "You know, when I bought this cabin, the scariest thing I thought I'd have to deal with was a bear breaking into my pantry, not this intergalactic laser tag nightmare." Lyra handed him a small device shaped like a disc. It hummed softly in his hand, glowing faintly around the edges. "What's this?" Jack asked, turning it over. "Cloaking emitter," the translator said. "Temporary invisibility." Jack's eyes widened. "Whoa, hold on. You're giving me an invisibility cloak? Like for real? Why didn't we use this sooner?" "Limited duration," the translator explained. Jack deflated slightly. "Figures. Still, this is officially the coolest thing I've ever owned. Do I get to keep it after this?" Lyra's expression didn't change, but Jack could have sworn he caught a flicker of annoyance. Fine, he muttered. "Let's go save the galaxy or whatever." The forest at night was a strange mix of beauty and terror. Moonlight filtered through the dense canopy, casting silver patterns across the ground. Jack couldn't decide if the distant hums and chirps were just nature doing its thing or the subtle whir of alien scouts. "You know," Jack whispered as they trudged through the underbrush, "this whole silent hike of doom thing could use some levity. Got any alien jokes?" Lyra didn't respond, but the translator buzzed. "Input humor. Define parameters." Jack snorted. "Forget it. I doubt you get my jokes anyway." "Attempt appreciated," the translator said, and Jack couldn't tell if it was mocking him. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, they reached the clearing where Lyra's ship lay hidden beneath a dense tangle of vines and debris. The craft was smaller than Jack had expected, sleek and angular, with a faint metallic sheen that seemed to ripple under the moonlight. "Wow," Jack said, stepping closer. "It's like a stealth fighter and a sci-fi movie prop had a baby." Lyra ignored him, focusing instead on the ship's access panel. She tapped a sequence of symbols, and the vines shifted, revealing a hatch. "Okay," Jack said, gripping the stun gun strapped to his side. "Let's make this quick before your fan club shows up." As if on cue, the proximity scanner on Lyra's wrist beeped. Jack glanced at it, his stomach sinking. "Let me guess," he said. "We've got company." The translator confirmed. 2 approaching vessels. Estimated arrival, 5 minutes. Jack cursed under his breath. Of course. Nothing's ever easy. Inside the ship, Lyra worked quickly, activating the comms array and inputting a series of commands. The interior was cramped but efficient, with panels that glowed softly as she moved. Jack hovered near the entrance, peeking out nervously. The forest was eerily still, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. "How much longer?" he asked, his voice tinged with panic. "Finalizing sequence," the translator said. Jack groaned. "Great, because we've got about 2 minutes before—" A low mechanical hum cut through the air, followed by the unmistakable sound of something large breaking through the treetops. Jack spun around, his heart racing. "They're here!" Lyra didn't flinch, her focus unwavering as she completed the final command. The ship's console emitted a high-pitched tone, and the translator said, "Signal transmitted. Assistance en route." "Fantastic," Jack said, gripping the stun gun. "Now let's hope we live long enough to see it." The first hunter vessel appeared above the clearing, its sleek black hull glowing faintly. It hovered menacingly, its underside bristling with what Jack could only assume were weapons. "Lyra," Jack said, backing toward the ship, "please tell me you've got a plan." The translator buzzed. Defensive measures engaged. Before Jack could ask what that meant, the ship's exterior lit up with bursts of golden energy. The hunter vessel fired back, its beams slicing through the clearing and narrowly missing Jack. "Okay, that's enough excitement for one night," Jack yelled, diving for cover behind a fallen log. Lyra emerged from the ship, her own weapon drawn, and began firing precise, controlled shots at the vessel. Her movements were fluid, almost graceful, as she dodged return fire. Jack, meanwhile, fumbled with his stun gun, muttering, "Why does this always happen to me?" By the time reinforcements arrived, sleek silver ships that matched Lyra's, the clearing was a smoking battlefield. The hunter vessel had been forced into retreat, and Jack sat slumped against a tree, his nerves completely shot. As Lyra coordinated with her allies, Jack let out a tired laugh. "I swear, the next time I see a for sale sign on a mountain cabin, I'm burning it." The translator buzzed. Humor noted. Jack grinned weakly. Glad someone appreciates it. For the first time, he felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they were going to make it out of this alive. The first rays of dawn filtered through the cabin's broken windows, painting streaks of light across the soot-stained walls. The air was thick with the mingled scents of scorched wood, alien metals, and something Jack could only describe as burnt electrical lemon. He sat at the kitchen table, holding what remained of his favorite coffee mug, now chipped and slightly warped from the chaos of the past few days. Across from him, Lyra stood silently, her sleek silver uniform restored to its former shine. Her translator hummed softly at her side, awaiting its next task. "Well," Jack said, leaning back with a weary sigh, "that was the most exciting week of my life, and I once got chased by a raccoon wielding a garden rake." The translator buzzed, translating Lyra's faint smile into words. Uncertain if comparison is flattering or tragic. Jack smirked. Probably both. The silver rescue ships had departed an hour earlier, taking the remnants of Lyra's damaged craft and the bodies of her pursuers with them. It was oddly quiet now, almost eerily so, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. "So," Jack said, gesturing to the scorched remains of his porch, "what's next for you? Back to ruling your galactic empire or whatever?" Lyra tilted her head, her golden eyes catching the light. "Not empire. Alliance," the translator corrected. "Mission remains incomplete." Jack frowned. "Incomplete? What, you're not done running for your life?" The translator hesitated before responding. "Pursuers are eliminated, threat minimized, but alliances require more than survival. They demand trust and understanding." Jack raised an eyebrow. "So what, you're on some kind of diplomatic quest?" Lyra nodded. Jack let out a low whistle. "Yikes. No offense, but you might want to work on your first impressions. You kind of started our alliance by pointing a laser gun at my face." The translator buzzed. "Noted." The two sat in silence for a moment, the quiet punctuated only by the occasional creak of the damaged roof. Jack ran a hand through his hair, his gaze drifting to the ruins of his once peaceful cabin. "I guess this is goodbye," he said, his voice softer now. Lyra inclined her head. Gratitude. Assistance was unexpected, but invaluable. Jack chuckled. "Yeah, well, you didn't leave me much choice. Besides, it's not every day you get to help an alien princess on the run from intergalactic assassins." The translator buzzed. "Not princess. Diplomatic envoy." Jack smirked. "Whatever you say, Your Highness." As Lyra turned to leave, Jack felt a pang of something he couldn't quite name. Loss? Regret? Maybe just the realization that for all its danger and insanity, the past week had been extraordinary. "Hey," he called after her. "Wait." She paused, looking back at him. Jack hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. "Listen, if you ever, I don't know, need a place to crash again." Maybe next time you don't blow up the porch first, huh? The translator buzzed. Acknowledged. Offer appreciated. Jack grinned. Good. Because I don't think my insurance covers alien shenanigans. As Lyra stepped outside, the faint hum of her personal transport filled the air. Jack followed her to the edge of the clearing, where a sleek disc-shaped craft waited, its surface shimmering like liquid mercury. She turned to face him one last time, her golden eyes meeting his. Farewell, Jack, the translator said. May your solitude bring peace and fewer disruptions. Jack snorted. I'll drink to that. With a final nod, Lyra stepped into the craft. The air shimmered around her, and within moments, she was gone, leaving Jack alone in the clearing. The days that followed felt surreal. The cabin was quieter than it had ever been, but Jack found himself noticing the little things more. The rustle of the wind through the trees, the calls of distant birds, the soft creak of the floorboards beneath his feet. For a man who'd once prized solitude above all else, he now found the silence almost unsettling. He spent the next week rebuilding what he could, patching up the roof and jury-rigging the porch into something functional. The scars of the battle remained, but Jack decided to leave them. They were part of the story now, a story he wasn't sure anyone would believe if he ever bothered to tell it. One evening, as he sat on the newly rebuilt porch with a fresh cup of coffee, Jack found himself staring up at the stars. He'd never paid much attention to them before, but now they felt different, bigger, more alive. He smiled faintly, raising his mug in a mock toast. Here's to you, Lyra, he murmured, wherever you are. A month later, Jack's cabin had almost returned to normal. The porch had a new set of chairs, the roof no longer leaked, and the pantry was fully stocked. Then, one night, as he sat tinkering with the cloaking emitter Lyra had accidentally left behind, the device buzzed to life. Jack blinked in surprise as a tiny hologram flickered into view, a familiar figure with golden eyes and an almost smile. Jack, the translator said, situation developing. Your assistance required. Jack stared at the hologram, a mix of disbelief and amusement spreading across his face. You've got to be kidding me, he muttered. The hologram remained, waiting. Jack set the emitter down, shaking his head with a laugh. Well, he said, grabbing his jacket, so much for quiet. As he stepped outside, the stars above seemed brighter than ever, and somewhere, out there in the vastness of the universe, adventure awaited.